audible? Hello. The history of astronomy is the history of presiding horizons. A very warm morning to our respected chief guests, club coordinators, alumni, and all wonderful audience. I, Sanika Peshne, on behalf of Astronomy Club, welcomes you all for most awaiting moment of our club, Stargaze. Now, starting with Astronomy Club, Stargaze is the event of Astronomy Club of the Technical Symposium Adhyay. It was inaugurated in 2016 under initial lead by Rohit Chinchwadkar. The club has got its own personal telescope. Now, understanding our universe is not an easy task. It requires an incredible amount of focused effort among worldwide collaboration of dedicated experts, the constant development of new technology at great expenses, and theoretical modeling that pushes the boundaries of science. Astronomy is continually innovating and progressing. Seemingly by accident, scientific and technological development in astronomy have worked their way into our daily lives. Astronomy is not a 9 to 5, as astronomy consists of a universe which varies on different climatical conditions and many more factors. The astronomers or anyone related to astronomical field have to be creative and knowledgeable. One such personality we have with us is Dr. Prasanna Deshmukh sir. He has done his PhD and MTech in astronomical instrumentation from IIA and University of Calcutta. So the moment we all have been waiting for is finally here. Now, I would like to request Dr. Prasanna Deshmukh sir to share his thoughts and enlighten us. Please, sir.
Yes, and thank you, Sanika. Thank you, Ashutosh, for inviting me for this particular event. I'll just share my screen, so let me know if it is visible. Is it good? Hello, can you please confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, so thanks a lot for inviting me for this particular talk. And this is something which is very dear to me. Talk about astronomy, talk about what we do, what are the challenges we are facing in building large telescopes, and how we kind of overcome them. And also to give some insight about what is the state of art of doing career in astronomy in India as well as abroad. So what I will do is I will cover some brief about what are the things we consider for building large telescopes, and we'll give more focus on TMT, as well as towards the end I will give some insight about or some information about what are the career options available as of now. So thanks once again for this invitation. And yeah, so as most of you know that telescopes are primarily used for collecting light and to see more distinct object more clear and more with more information. So the first telescope was kind of envisioned and actually put together long back, whereas Galileo first used it for astronomical purpose, and his telescope was very simple, only less than 2-inch diameter, and but that telescope gave a lot of light gathering power as compared to human eye, and it was 10 times better than human eye in terms of collecting light, and it was 10 times better in terms of resolution. So when I say resolution, it is basically when you see moon, you see just a white disk, whereas if you see through telescope you will be able to see the craters on the moon, because telescopes are capable of resolving the things. That's the beauty about telescope in comparison to human eye. Human eye is absolutely kind of great tool for us. Everyone have uh, but the limitation is like we can only see detailed details for objects which are nearby, whereas fortunately or unfortunately in astronomy all the objects are so far away from us, we have to use telescopes. So that was a very good tool for revolutionizing astronomy, and he immediately used this telescope for seeing nearby objects like Venus, moons of the Jupiter, and craters of the moon. And with that, he was able to convince himself as well as others that telescopes are a useful tool for astronomy. So, as I said, all of us are having one telescope or two telescopes rather with us. That is our uh, eye, human eye, and its role is to basically focus light on its retina and where the image is formed. And eye is a kind of a telescope of say 2 mm in diameter, depending on our opening, whereas uh, lens also does the same thing. As you can see here, this is a refracting lens. It focuses light at one point, but the problem with the lens is it has a lot of aberrations and primarily chromatic aberration. So because of that, when light passes through a lens, it focuses different color focus at different points, and that creates aberrated image. And this particular issue was resolved by Newton by using a reflective mirror, wherein light is reflected from its surface and focuses at one point. And with this, astronomy changed quite rapidly. One of the aspect is also to make big lens. It was very difficult, and making mirrors is relatively simple. Not very easy, but relatively. And I'll let you know why bigger telescopes are better. So, yeah, as I said, collecting more light and lenses are better, mirrors are better than lenses. So, one of the characterizing factor of a telescope is its diameters, the opening pupil. So, the way for human it is 2 mm or so. Here it is the diameter of the lens or diameter of the mirror. And once we have telescope, what we do is basically use it for taking images or getting spectra. So uh, unlike the telescopes which are used for amateur purpose, wherein we see through the telescope or see through the eyepiece, wherein there is a primary lens, it forms an image and that is magnified by using an eyepiece, and we see that. Whereas in astronomy, what we do is we put a camera over here at the focal point where the image is formed, and we take images and do different aspects, different things about it. So one aspect is taking the images of a sky and basically interpreting them. Maybe it is a position or the brightness or brightness variation, and so on and so forth. Whereas other way is to put a spectrograph, which basically splits light into its color. And the beauty of spectrograph is that it will tell you what is the elemental content of the object which we are looking at. So, for example, if there is a star, and by looking at the star, we can tell whether it is sun type of star, or like sun-like star, or some other type of star, because all the objects in this universe are having different chemical composition, and when light passes through these gases, some gases will get absorbed, or sorry, or rather some wavelengths will get absorbed based on the type of gas present there. And we will, when we split the light or overall light which is coming to us, we will see some light bands missing or some wavelengths missing in that. And based on that, we can interpret that the atmosphere of that particular astronomical object is having some kind of chemical abundance in them. So here is one example wherein if you see Venus, you will be able to see that it is made up of CO2. And when sun's light passes through this Venus atmosphere, and if you take the spectra of it, it will look like this. If you see Mars, it is having mostly CO2 again, and that also can be seen here. Whereas if you see Earth, or rather, if you take the spectra of Earth's atmosphere, this is what it looks, and it's quite significantly different than Venus or Mercury, or Venus or Mars, as you can see here, and it is having signatures of water H2O, then ozone O3, and CO2. Now, by doing this kind of studies, it is very advantageous to predict what kind of planet is there which we are observing through telescopes, if we are having some planets elsewhere in our universe or elsewhere in other solar systems. Now, the problem with that is they are far away, and to observe them we need a higher and higher resolution, because when you are seeing a star and its planet around it, the starlight will kind of overwhelm your observation, so you will not be able to see the light coming from the star, from the planet distinctly. And to help in that, we need telescopes with higher and higher resolution. And for that, we had to build telescopes which are larger in size, and that has been a trend so far in the last 400 years. As you can see, Galileo built his 2-inch telescope, and then Newton built his reflective telescope. And then as time has passed in the 19th century, there was a good progress, but it was steady. And then now presently you can see we were expecting telescope size to increase steadily, but now it is increasing exponentially, and thanks to technology which is enabling us, and that's what we will be discussing today. So if you see, the breakpoint is somewhere here, and that is at the Keck telescope, which is 10-meter class telescope, and it is made up of some new technology which is called as segmented mirror telescope. So the same graph is given here in terms of its mirrors, primary mirrors. You can see that previously all the telescopes were made up of single mirrors, whereas as Keck telescope has come in 1993, after that all these telescopes 2009, 7, 96, 2005, and what we are now building all are segmented mirror telescopes. What it means is we build small telescopes and put them together and make them aligned such that they will act as a single monolithic primary mirror. Now here there are some challenges, and that's what we will be discussing today. So before we go ahead and talk about the technology, let's see where we put this telescope. So some of the challenges in terms of selecting telescope site is we need skies which are dark. So what I mean is when we are observing fainter and fainter object, we will want to have less and less city light pollution as well as less dust pollution, because what happens is whenever there is a dust, light will get reflected from it or scattered from it, and it creates a uniform background. And this you might have experience from your place where you're staying. In the night, if you go out and check, you will see a constant hazy background in the night, and that is because of the dust from your city and light pollution from your city. So too, if we have that kind of thing, we will not be able to see fainter object, because the signal to noise ratio term comes into picture. What happens is whereas the city light or the reflected light from atmosphere is our noise. So if noise light is more than signal noise, we will not be able to convincingly tell that what light is coming from star and what light is coming from our local noise polluting object. So uh, one simple thing is your parents or your grandfather or grandmom might have told you that in their time they used to see night sky very clearly, and then they used to see galaxy also. I mean, Andromeda galaxy is very prominently visible from naked eye from the remote locations where there is a less light pollution. But nowadays, hardly anyone will be able to see it from the cities. And the reason for that is Andromeda galaxy is having its surface brightness of around fourth magnitude, whereas typically sky pollution will be somewhere around second magnitude or third magnitude. At max, it can go up to 3.5 in major cities. But because the sky is not so good in the cities, we won't be able to see Andromeda galaxy via naked eyes here on. So if there is a light pollution, so having a clear skies, darker skies, and having less polluted skies is very very essential for us to observe night sky and to put telescopes over there. We also want good seeing. And what I mean by seeing is if you have ever seen a flowing river from the bridge, you might have observed that the objects which are below the river bed, if the water is clear, you might have seen them to be shaking or moving uh, in random directions, and that is because those objects are stable, the water on top of it is flowing. And same thing happens with our stars. When stars are stable, they are at same position, but the Earth's atmosphere is flowing, and because of that we will see the twinkling of the star skies, or we won't be able to get sharper image. To get sharper image, you have to avoid the atmosphere, which is not practically feasible from ground unless you go into space. That's why people put telescopes in space. Whereas on ground, if you have to do, you have to try to climb highest mountain, and that is how we find our telescope sites on mountainous regions, where we try to avoid the majority of the disturbing content of the atmosphere. Another thing is it should be a good have a good weather over there. If every now and then if we see cloudy nights, or if there is hurricanes or some cloudy nights are more than clear nights, then there is no point in putting our big telescopes there. So it should have a clear, dry weather with less rainfall, and so on and so forth. And as I said already, that we should go in higher altitudes such that we get uh, good and less atmosphere. And with less atmosphere, also it is useful to get infrared and UV radiations towards the telescope. So having those capabilities are also extremely useful because, as I'll show in the end of the slide, that observing same thing in different bands or different wavelengths gives us extra edge to understand what is happening at the astronomical objects. So this is something like synonymous with our doctor. When we visit our doctor, suppose we have some bone fracture, he will do a visual observation, but he will also take an X-ray and try to determine what is the cause of or what is the present state of our fracture. So similarly, we can observe astronomical sources in different wavelengths and get some insight into the mechanics which is happening. So yeah, and this is about optical, infrared, UV telescopes. Whereas if you're going into radio observatories, like in Pune, there is one very good radio observatory, GMRT, and there are other big telescopes coming up in coming time. So those requires less electromagnetic radiation pollution-free zones like radio signals, and typically cell phones and TV and radio stations are creating pollution to them. So these observatories need to be farther away from these radio telescopes should be farther away from these polluting elements. So if we meet these requirements, then we'll end up in such situations where we are on top of the world. So this is one view from Hawaii, where we are planning to put our 30-meter telescope, and the other one in the right side is Chile, where there are already big telescopes, and we're not very far from this location. European group is putting their extremely large telescope called as EELT, European Extremely Large Telescope, whereas what we're putting on Hawaii is 30-meter telescope, where India is partnering and I work for. Of course, we have very good sites in India as well. There is one site near Kavalur here in Tamil Nadu, whereas uh, there is one good site in Himalayas, which is Indian Astronomical Observatory in Hanle, around 200 kilometers from Leh city. And there are other sites also in Devastal as well as in Udaipur and in Ahmedabad and so on and so forth. But this is one, IAO Hanle is one of the best site in India as of now. So as you can see, the extremely dry is high on the mountain. Though you are seeing that these mountains are higher than this, but actually we are on top of one mountain peak called as Mount Saraswati in Hanle, from where this particular picture is taken. And then this is extremely clean and clear site where we have very good sky coverage, less light pollution or almost no light pollution, less dust, less rainfall, and beautiful sky for observing the night sky. So let's go towards now technicality of the telescope. So one of the important thing about telescope is, as I said, to collect more and more light. And as we collect more light by using the larger telescopes of larger diameter, the larger the diameter, the better signal to noise ratio. And signal to noise ratio is a function of square of the diameter. So if you increase the diameter by twice, we will increase the signal to noise ratio by 4 times. And that is the good thing about building a large telescope. It is also inversely proportional to the diameter. So the larger the diameter, the sharper resolution we'll get. So smaller value of resolution angle is better. And this is given by a simple formula called 1.22 into lambda by d. Lambda is the wavelength at which we are observing, and d is the diameter. So afterwards, if you want to know why radio telescopes are very, very large compared to optical telescope, is because of this lambda, because the radio wavelengths are longer. Hence, to get better resolution, we have to build extremely large radio telescopes as well, which are relatively easy to build compared to optical telescope. But since in optical range, around say 500 nanometer, with the smaller telescopes like 2 or 3 inch, you can do miraculous observations. And building 30-meter telescope is like heaven for us. Indeed. So here is one example where you can see this is a Saturn image taken with a 4-inch telescope and 8-inch telescope. So with 4-inch, you can't resolve the rings, the gaps between the rings. Whereas if you have 8-inch telescope, you can see the centimeters gap between it. Whereas if you build even more larger telescope, this is a 10-meter class telescope. You can see even the bands on the Jupiter's Saturn surface. Here, this Saturn surface bands are roughly visible, but if you have 10-meter telescope, which is Keck telescope, you will be able to see even better details. But one thing you notice that the jump between 4-inch to 8-inch was huge, but from 8-inch there is not a huge jump with using 10-meter telescope. And the reason for this is Earth's atmosphere. And to correct for this, astronomers have now kind of commonly using something called as adaptive optics, which reduces the effect of Earth's atmosphere, which blurs the image as seen here. So all these big telescopes are requiring adaptive optics. Otherwise, you will not get any better results by just building larger telescopes. In order to have a sharper image and good resolution, you have to use large telescopes along with something called as adaptive optics, which corrects for the effect of Earth's atmosphere. Now you see here, this is a Hubble Space Telescope's image. This is 2-meter telescope as compared to 10-meter Keck, but the quality of images which you get in space is tremendous. And then that's the advantage why we want to go to space to observe astronomical sources, because Earth's atmosphere causes major disturbance here, because light is traveling billions of years, and then as it enters into Earth's atmosphere, it just gets disturbed. And so that is a problem. But sending large telescopes to space itself is another challenge. And as you might have seen, very recently there was one successor of Hubble Space Telescope, which is JWST, which was sent to space, but which was extremely complicated, one of the most complicated experiments ever attempted by humans. And of course, it is successful now. It is doing its job without any failures. So that's the great thing, and we'll be able to get even better astronomical observations. But building large telescopes in space is, as of now, it is technologically still challenging. Hence, we can send telescopes of the order of few meters only in space. But having larger telescopes is helpful, as you can see. So if we go back and check, okay, if I have to build large telescope, can I build by just building a single big mirror? And then the answer is no, that we can't build telescopes beyond 8 meters. And that is kind of fundamental limit for how large an optical mirror can be. The reason for that is when you have a larger mirror, it needs to be thicker because glass is not a perfect solid. It is kind of semi-solid. So if you build such a large mirror with nanometric accuracy of its surface, over a period of time it will kind of try to flow down. As if you drop few droplets of water, initially they will form a very nice drop, but eventually it will just spread out. So similarly, within few months or few years, the mirrors will get deformed, and it's very hard to maintain shape of mirrors larger than 8 meter. And also to support such a 8-meter mirror, we'll need a very complex and very heavy mechanical structure. That becomes a challenge. And further, when you build this telescope, as I've shown, that we send these telescopes to such a tall mountains. So it is very risky because when we build a telescope, we will build one mirror only of such a large size. If it breaks, then we will lose everything. So the risk of breakage of mirror is very high. And yeah, so these problems creates makes it extremely difficult to build one single mirror of 30 meter or 20 meter or so. So at max, we can as of now build 8-meter class monolithic mirrors. And as I already mentioned, that there are a lot of challenges with building a single monolithic mirror. One is like getting the mirror blank. In order to polish a mirror, we need first glass mirror, which is to be used for polishing. So making that mirror, not many facilities in the world are capable of it. Only one facility is currently operational, which is able to manufacture such a big piece of good quality optical mirrors. And then breaking them during the fabrication as well as transport is very risky, and it will get deformed due to the self gravity, self weight. It will form all sorts of deformations which need to be corrected. and building like polishing such a large mirror requires complicated tools and large scale tools. So overall it becomes a challenge, and hence that was a breaking point, which was from one of the mirror telescopes which were made, that was Gemini, not Gemini, it was from, okay, just go back, let me see. Yeah, this I think it is a Magellan telescope which attempted for building a large telescope, and initially they failed. And once that happened, what they did is they just replaced it with two large mirrors, and it was very difficult to kind of keep building larger and larger mirrors and put them together to form a single telescope. So hence, later on in 1993 or so, with the leadership from Jerry Nelson. Yeah, this kind of segmented mirror telescopes were envisioned, and all the telescopes coming after that of 10-meter class were made up of segmented mirror technology. So, and as you can see, there are different variants in that as well, like HET and South African Large Telescope. All are made up of spherical mirrors, whereas GTC and Keck telescope were made up of kind of hyperbolic profiles. So that's what is also now currently adopted for 30-meter telescope, where we have a hyperbola as an overall surface, and all the mirrors on it are part of that big hyperbola. So it's kind of it solves one problem of, or rather, it solves most of these difficulties, but it creates host of new challenges. So what are the challenges with building segmented mirrors is like basically when you're breaking a single mirror into say here 36 mirrors for cake, it becomes like you had to handle 36 individual components and their support structure. So the overall number of sheer number of parts increases, and just imagine when you have from 36 to around say 500 segments like this for TMT telescope, it will become extremely complicated in terms of number of parts we have to handle and use. And then these telescopes are usually not a perfect sphere. Now, if you can imagine, if you have a spherical telescope, means its primary mirror is made up of sphere. Its shape is like a sphere. So each part of the sphere is having same radius of curvature. Whereas when you have mirrors of a hyperbola or parabola, each section on the hyperbola or parabola is having different conic constant, different shape, and that becomes a challenge because now when you are building such a large mirror of segments, not all the mirrors are identical. We will have to make individual mirrors with different uh, sphericity, and that's what becomes a challenging, that it is off axis optics requires some specialized techniques to fabricate these mirrors. Of course, leaving the gap in between here creates all sorts of diffraction effect, because if you have seen some typical star image, it will be like a cross symbol or having six kind of six lines coming out of a single star. Whereas if you see, those effects are due to the holding structures which come in between the primary mirror and the star. Whereas here now you have these artificial black lines or missing optical elements in between the intersegments, that creates lots of diffraction effects which need to be taken care. And when you are building a nanometric mirror surface over a 30 meter or 10 meter, say, aligning it and keeping the alignment becomes a challenging task. And for that, we have to use some specialized active components like actuators and sensors to correct for any deviation and to detect and then correct for any deviations of mirror segments with respect to the overall profile of the mirror shape. So we want to keep all the mirrors within say 10 nanometer RMS with respect to each other. So that is a very challenging task. Yeah. And yeah, there are other aberrations also which will come if there is a rotation of the mirror. One mirror gets rotated, it creates some kind of astigmatism kind of effects. You might have heard about astigmatism, coma, spherical aberration, chromatic aberrations, and so on. So it creates some additional aberrations which need to be mitigated. So we know that it will happen, but we will now adopt some engineering solutions for it so as to correct them or to restrict the effect of it. And aligning is a very challenging, but it is done via this method which is shown here. First, what we do is we bring the all the spots of the light coming from individual segments to a single point. And this same thing you might have seen recently when JWST telescope was being aligned. Initially, when they observed 18 dots, and then those 18 dots were merged into a single dot. So that's called as co-alignment, wherein all the light coming from different segments is pulled back towards a single focus by using some actuators below the individual segments. And then you can see even the light is focused at one point. You need to have light focused in phase. What it means is it is called as focusing. So what may happen is light reflected from one mirror is in phase with the light reflected from other mirror, but it is one cycle less because light is a wave. If you imagine, it goes up and down, so it will have peaks and valleys. So the first peak and second peak may coincide from one mirror and another mirror, and that creates problem. It is not a sharp image. So hence we need something called as co-focusing and co-phasing, wherein all the light paths traveled by individual from the individual mirror segments is exactly identical, and then only we get the best advantage of such large telescopes. So this is one of the challenging thing for which we require some specialized instruments called as alignment and phasing system on top of each and every segmented mirror telescope. But of course, people have now mastered this technology of segmented mirror telescopes, and now we have two Keck observatories. As you can see, these are twin observatories where these telescopes were also having not very uh, not very long that they were able to combine light coming from both the telescopes and use it together. That is called as interferometry, which is another tool for getting the resolution of 75 meters by building two observatories at 75 meters distance but having a 10-meter kind of diameter. So if you can very precisely put the light together coming from two observatories, it is very much possible to get resolution of 75 meter. But of course, overall light collected will be less. And then there is a GTC telescope in Spain and HET telescope in US, and then there is a one telescope in South Africa. So there are these active telescopes which are doing fantastic job of observing and giving higher resolutions. Of course, as I said, some telescopes are made up of spheres, spherical geometry, and some are aspherics. So aspherics are better. And now what astronomers are planning to build is even more larger telescopes. We call them as ELTs, extremely large telescope. And there are three of them as of now. One is 39-meter ELT. Sorry, this is kind of repeated from here. This is GTC, Giant Magellanic Telescope, GMT, which is 24-meter. And as you can see, this is made up of monoliths, but seven in number. So this is of 8 meter, 8 meter, and 8 meter. That forms 24-meter diameter telescope. People are still believing and kind of mastering the technology of using monolithic large mirrors. So this is the maximum which we can build. Whereas for TMT and ELT, what we have chosen is to build a large telescope by using smaller hexagonal mirror segments. So for TMT, we have 1.4-meter individual hexagons, but around 492 of them so as to form 30-meter diameter telescope. For ELT, we are having 798 hexagonal mirrors, again 1.4-meter in diameter each, and this forms 39-meter segmented mirror telescope. So that is going to be ELT, and these telescopes are now presently under final design phase, or some of them are already started manufacturing the components like TMT and ELT. Already components are being manufactured, and for ELT site is also in progress. So yeah, for presently for 30-meter, we have planned to use this particular site. So you can see these two white dots are Keck telescopes as of now, and this is a artistic rendering of where we are planning to put Keck telescope, sorry, TMT telescope. So this will give us very good observations because we are having good seeing at this site, and that's why Hawaiian site is our primary site. Further, we also plan to put this telescope in at such a location where we can maximize the geographical location in terms of the partners, because building such a large telescope is not a very easy task. And we are planning to build this with the help of China, Japan, USA, and Canada, and all five countries together will be able to achieve uh, this goal. And this also shows you how difficult it is in terms of financial as well as technological challenges, because single country is not capable of as of now to build a single large telescope of this nature. So this is the architecture of TMT. We have a primary mirror over here. Light comes from the sky, enters through this opening, falls on this primary mirror, gets reflected to a secondary, which itself is of the size of largest telescope in India. So as of now, largest telescope in India is around 3.6 meter at Devasthal, and secondary mirror of this telescope is around 3 meters, which is comparable to one of the largest telescope in India. And then further light gets reflected to the just a minute. Further light gets reflected to the tertiary mirror, and then it goes to the instruments. So there are different instruments, as you can see here, and these different instruments are capable of doing different types of sciences. One of the instrument is for spectrographs. Yeah, just a minute. Give me a minute. Yeah, sorry, I'm back. So yeah, so all these instruments are of the such size that we will be able to do different types of sciences. One of the instrument is a very high resolution spectrograph. There is a camera, then there is a coronagraph, then there are planet finding instruments, and so on and so forth. So we divide these instruments into three generations, like first generation instruments, to basically have instruments ready when the telescope is fully constructed. And as we go ahead, we will keep on adding additional instruments as per the requirements. So for TMT, we have such arrangement where you have with three actuators. Red color dots are basically actuators, and these are the sensors. And my primary role in this telescope project is to get these sensors manufactured here in India and supplied to the project. So that's what I'm doing presently. I'll show you some images of how actually these actuators look. And for in total, these are the ongoing details. But just to give you some information, that in total we have around 492 mirror segments, uh, and almost 50% of them are going to get manufactured in India, here in Bangalore. There are around sensors. Those edge sensors are nothing but these small blocks. These are capable of detecting nanometer displacement of mirror segments, individual mirror segments with respect to its neighbors. And 1500 actuators, these are the blue boxes which you can see here. These actuators are capable of tip, tilt, and piston to individual mirror segments. So that way you can imagine, whenever we see a defect, we can detect and correct by using these actuators. So there are 1500 sensors, 500 mirror segments, and each of these segment, someone may ask, okay, how we are going to correct any deviation within a segment itself? So for that also we have provision. We have 21 actuators below each of the segments. So you can see the small white dots here. These are individual linear actuators along with their springs, leaf springs, so that we can bend individual mirror segment nanometrically and then achieve some fine corrections if required. So, and all this is working in closed loop, and the typical lifespec for this telescope is 50 years. So these components are required to be reliable with a life duration. So that is one of the challenge for which we are currently building actuators, edge sensors, SSA, mirrors, and so on. So yeah, this is a side view loops working. And if we imagine, uh, as you can see here, suppose there is which experiences some disturbances. Now, what are the disturbances? One is a wind disturbance because on there will be a constant wind flowing. Then there is a thermal disturbance in terms of temperature changing. Telescopes are kept on such a large mechanical structures, they will expand due to change in compensated, and it will result in change in the profile of the mirror, overall profile of the primary mirror. So that has to be detected and corrected. And there is also orientation change because of which it will, because such a large flexible, the overall shape will get deformed as we change the orientation of the telescope, and that also is to be corrected. So wind vibration also is one of the concern because there will be a lot of other equipments kept nearby which will add to the minor disturbances to the mirrors, which will affect the overall shape of the mirror. So there is a lot of disturbance detected and corrected. Of course, these disturbances are on top of disturbances created by the Earth's atmosphere. And as I told before, that for that we use something called as adaptive optic technology, which mimics the Earth's atmosphere and corrects the light path. Whereas whatever I was showing now is active optics, wherein we correct the disturbances locally happening at the mirror. So here is India's contribution to this telescope project to provide 82 segments, mirror segments, which are 45 in 1.4 meter in diameter. Something which is very challenging task, never been done before at such a large scale and quantity. But now the facilities are almost starting the production. We are also going to provide all the support structures. Each of these support around 500 subcomponents, and presently L&T is manufacturing such. We need around 580 SSAs. All the electronics fabricated here in India. I'm also working with some companies and research labs. These sensors. This is called as edge sensor. This is basically glass blocks, very cleaned with gold coating on top of it, and then we have done the laser this part, and this becomes a simple capacitor. So you might have seen in your college days equal to epsilon A by D, whereas epsilon is the permittivity of air area. This is the area, and D is the gap between the sensors. So if you put these two blocks on the segment edges, one block on one segment, another block on other, whenever there is a the relative overlapping area will change, and that will change the capacitance, which can be interpreted what is the change in vertical height. Whereas if the sensors go away due to the thermal change, structure expands, sensors goes away, D will change, which is in the denominator, so which will affect, or which will tell us that capacitance value is changed because there is change in distance between the two sensors. Interesting part, all the 6,000 blocks or other 3,000 pairs from India. 1,500 actuators, as I said, we are currently working with several companies to fabricate this. Several rounds of actuator prototypes is already fabricated successfully, and now currently manufacturing several new prototypes to supply for this project. Optical instruments are also going to be fabricated, designed, and there are a lot of scientists and engineers who are working on conceptualizing these instruments. And you can see the sheer size of these instruments. They are as big as our large telescopes. Figure in comparison to the size of instruments, and most of these components are one of their kind. Has ever fabricated such large scale optical components of that complexity. And I mean, engineering techniques are allowing us to, that's what we do it. And then there are some aspects of these manufacturing or these designs predict what kind of technology might be available in coming time, or what kind of capabilities will be available in bank on them. Basically, we rely on them for manufacturing in future, whereas presently we use as we move ahead, we know that these new technologies which are under R&D maybe we for software development. So all the software required, or rather almost all required for this telescope will be coming from India. So this is a major contribution, whereas it forms 10% contribution to the overall telescope project. Hence, we will get 10% use of this telescope once it is commissioned. So as I was saying that India is contributing 84 mirror segments. So this is a sample mirror, how it looks. And there is a separate facility which is kind of established at here in Bangalore in our Indian Institute of Astrophysics, one of the campus at Hoskote. And this is one of the largest optics manufacturing facility in India as well, because no single company was able to demonstrate that they can manufacture such a large scale optics, because this technology was not available with us. But now, due to this participation in this telescope project, now we are getting this technology as well as capability of manufacturing large scale optics. And it uses something called as stressed mirror polishing, very interesting phenomenon, where conventionally it was very easy to manufacture a spherical mirror, because if you have a optics polishing or grinding tool, if you put a random strokes on this glass piece, it will form a sphere. The natural way of getting mirror polished is that natural shape which we get out of mirror polishing is sphere. Whereas what we are doing here is we are putting a mirror on some specialized tool called as stressed mirror polishing, which basically compresses the mirror from different sides with a different force, as well as it holds from the middle using some vacuum plugs. And because there is a force on the mirror, differential force on the mirror, this mirror will get deformed initially. Once it is deformed, you polish it to a sphere, which is easy, or rather which is a conventional thing. And once the polishing is done, you release the forces. And because it was differentially stressed, when the stress releases, it also releases differentially, and hence a polished sphere under stress will get converted into a sphere. And the forces at which this mirror will be stressed will be pre-calculated and uh, pre-validated, so as to get desired shape of that big hyperbola. So that is the technology required for such a mirrors, but it cannot give you very fine shape. For that purpose, we use some specialized uh, techniques, such as ion beam figuring, in which we can remove the material atom by atom by using some argon gas. And by this particular method, we will be able to achieve the final shape of the mirror. Whereas with the stress mirror polishing, we'll be able to, yeah, we will be able to get the desired uh, shape in terms of hyperbola. And also, once the mirror is polished, we will cut it using the hex cutting technique, wherein a water jet will be used to cut the mirror into hexagon from a sphere. And for that purpose, also we will have to kind of consider its effect, because when you have one circular piece of mirror, when you cut some portion of it, it will again deform because it is relieving some stress. And hence, we will have to pre-calculate all these forces to accommodate, and then polish a mirror to some different shape, release the stress, cut the circle into a hex, and then see whether our shape is achieved or not. So that's the technology. As I said, a lot of complicated mechanical components are also required, which are very precise. Uh, of course, in India, there is a lot of manufacturing capabilities, but precise manufacturing such a precise components at such a large scale with repeatability is very challenging. But uh, our past involvement and a lot of efforts have made us to manufacture these SSAs components in India, and then presently L&T is able to make these SSAs, and they are in production now. So 580 total SSAs will be manufactured in next few years. And once you install a mirror on top of this SSA, it looks like this. As I said, actuators, this is one of the actuator, is shown here. Many actuators are required per segment. This is also a complex mechanical structure with electromagnetic components. So around around 50 components are required to make one actuator, and this is nanometric actuator, which can give you positioning of 4 nanometers. Yeah. This is also made in India. Of course, these are some technical details. One of the interesting feature here is also something called a snubber. So this snubber is used to protect this actuator from earthquake, because we are putting this telescope in Hawaii, where which is an earthquake zone. Whenever there will be a earthquake, we expect that the power for this telescope will be cut, and at that time this actuator will be de-energized. But because this actuator is working on something called as voice coil motor, which consumes a lot of current to generate force, but it is a soft actuator. So whenever power is cut, this actuator will fall back, and that may have bad effect or breaking effect on our mirrors as well as SSAs. So to avoid that, we have a mechanism which is functional throughout the telescope's operation, but is not in operation unless telescope stops operating, and unless the power to the entire telescope goes down. Till then, this particular feature will not come into action, but it will be operational throughout, and it is having an active component, which means it is continuously tracking the present position of the actuator and maintaining one delrin material block in between these grooves, which you can see here and here. So it's kind of very interesting engineering design. Also, this actuator is made with off-axis nature, which reduces power consumption several folds by using a lever mechanism and offloading mechanism. So only the dynamic forces which are coming on this actuator due to wind and vibration are corrected actively, whereas passively we are offloading the orientation load or the gravity vector load on the actuator by using these springs and this additional hard actuator or linear actuator, as you can see. As I mentioned before, edge sensors, they work on basic principle of capacitance, and I told you that we use height measurement by using the overlapping area, c equal to epsilon A by D. A is the area, and as the area changes when one block goes up and down, the relative overlapping area will change. There are two capacitors you can see, one here, one plate, and the other part is here, and second plate and other part is here. So there are two parallel capacitors, and based on height change, area will change, and based on the gap change, D will change here. And by using two differential signals, we will be able to estimate the change in capacitance and hence the distances. Also, it requires epsilon is a very tricky factor, because in the 30-meter kind of telescope, you can't expect epsilon value to be constant everywhere, and was a challenge so far. But now we have a specialized boot mechanism, you can see here. This will cover the sensors, and then there is a flexible membrane here in between, and there are two inlets you can see. So here we will be purging in dry nitrogen gas, which is having same kind of epsilon value everywhere. So all the 3000 sensors will require this specialized boots and purging, which will help in maintaining the atmosphere there and maintaining the epsilon value constant all over. Software, I already mentioned that this is the entire software required. These are the blocks which represent software requirement, and all the red color blocks are part of Indian supply. So in the I just mentioned that segmentation creates some effects. But the good thing is it is a known effect, and the diffraction effect which is created by the uh, segmented optical mirrors is known and can be considered in our analysis. So though it is a effect is real, but it is mitigated later on by post processing. Yeah, and also there is a one aspect of people usually ask when you are building a 30-meter telescope and you are having small gap. In our case, we have around 2.5 gap between the mirror segment, and that much of light we are losing. So whether we are losing any considerable amount of light, the answer is no, because it is of the order of 0.7% of the entire area of the mirror. So out of 100% light which is falling on 30-meter diameter, we are able to collect 99.3% light. The problem which it creates is in infrared, wherein these gaps, it will be our telescope, or we will be able to observe the infrared radiation come backside of the mirror. So that becomes a problem. But of course, it is a problem for particular observations, and that also can be mitigated by maintaining the temperature below this observatory at nominal temperature, so as to avoid any excess heating. For that, there are so many mitigations taken care. One of that mitigation was in actuator, when I said you that we have offloading mechanism which reduces the load on the actuator's voice coil by transferring that load to components and hence reducing the power consumption. And when you reduce the power consumption, heat generated by the electronic components also reduces. So that is one way of avoiding any excess heating below the mirrors. And I have already mentioned that segmented mirror telescope is kind of a present as well as it will be future. Already we have segmented JWST in space, which is 6-meter telescope, and upcoming telescopes will also be in this zone. And in the beginning, I mentioned that putting a large optical telescope is feasible on the ground, but why we want to go to space is basically you get rid of the atmosphere, but also you can get access to other wavelengths. Like, of course, UV wavelengths. Not all wavelengths can reach till the ground. There are a significant band of UV and infrared which is only observable from the space. So hence, though we are now going towards larger and larger optical ground base, we will also be seeing a trend of building even larger optical telescopes in space. And there is one more thing which is coming up in present as well as in future is multi-messenger astronomy. And what it calls it is basically using different telescopes to observe similar kind of phenomena. So for example, here you can see there are so many telescopes with complementary advantages. For example, let's say SKA telescope, and all this, by the way, all these telescope projects or all these science projects, India is partnering with different capacities. There is INO, which is Indian project, CERN, which is a Large Hadron Collider, then FAIR, which is particle experiment, then SKA, which is Spectra Array, which is a radio telescope. TMT is optical infrared telescope, basically nuclear fusion reaction experiment. And then there is LIGO, which is again astronomy project for detecting gravitational waves coming from uh, outer universe. So basically, there are a couple of telescopes, like for example, SK, TMD, and LIGO can work hand in hand to do observations of similar kind of phenomena. Suppose there is a black hole merger that can be observed in radio as well as in optical or infrared. So that kind of multi-messenger astronomy is becoming a reality with these new telescopes coming up. And once we have such a telescope of 30 meter in diameter, we will be able to do all kinds of sciences. One is observing nearby solar system. Also, we can observe extrasolar planets from other galaxies, other solar systems. We can observe star forming regions where new stars are getting birth. Then we can observe our own Milky Way, nearby galaxies, and their black holes. And this is observing black holes at the center of galaxies has become a very recent trend. And there is a telescope called as Event Horizon Radio Telescope, which is capable of observing black holes. Of course, we can study the galaxies, early universe, and as I indicated, multi-messenger astronomy by combining different advantages of different telescopes to do similar kind of sciences. And when we have these telescopes, it will solve so many outstanding problems and outstanding queries which we have. But such a large telescope also comes with an added advantage that we will be able to see something which we have never thought about, or never the questions which we have never asked. Those questions we will be start thinking about and asking about, and then that will decide the path of next generation telescopes after this. Of course, people have been thinking about 100-meter telescopes and so on. But as we go ahead and build these telescopes, use them, we will realize that, oh, there are so many other outstanding questions we need to address. And that's how astronomy will progress in coming decade. And for that, we require added manpower, added people to this field. And India is thriving in this field. There are a lot of big mega science projects in astronomy presently undertaken and will be executed over next 10 to 15 years. And for that, we will require a lot of manpower in terms of skilled uh, engineers as well as scientists who will use these facilities, and for which it is very kind of relevant to talk about whether we can do career in astronomy, and especially in India. So yeah, let's go to that section. Yes, we can do astronomy, and as I understand, you are from BTech background, so I'll just focus on that. Then after BTech, there are opportunities for doing MTech and PhD, the way I have done at Indian Institute of Astrophysics. Now, presently at ARIS Nainital also is having this particular program wherein you can get admission for a dual degree, MTech and PhD in astronomical instrumentation after doing your BTech. And then there are, you can do direct PhD as well. Once you're done this, PhD is one of the key point in doing career in astronomy, because you can get some good opportunities like professor, scientist, or engineering positions. Whereas if you're not interested into doing research as such, but you want to support cause of astronomy, then there are different technical support positions like in different mechanical engineering, civil engineering, electrical engineering, and so on and so forth. Branches are always welcome for in this field, because we need people of different background to help in building these telescopes and also realizing uh, the goals of these telescopes. So, yeah, so anyone can do astronomy. And then if you're interested in doing PhD program, there are these institute, ARIS in Nainital, IIS in Bangalore, IIA Bangalore from where I'm talking now. Then Raman Research Institute is there here in Bangalore, NCRA, Ayuka in Pune, TIF in Mumbai, and PRL in Ahmedabad. So these are the places where you can do PhD. These are the primary research institutes. Of course, there are a lot of other universities and science institutes where you can still do PhD in these fields. Yeah, of course, I'll not go in this because this is for path for people after doing their 12 standard. But since you might be somewhere here, doing getting admission requires you to appear for some of the competitive exams like GATE exam or JEST exam and get the admission for technical PhDs or master's degree in astronomy. Yeah. And then what you can expect to do is, if you are interested in science, you can do theoretical simulations or modelings. Whereas if you are interested more into observations, you can use the existing telescopes and do the observations and create science cases for upcoming telescopes. So that is something called as observational astronomy. And of course, what I do instrumentation is basically building the instruments and telescopes for next generation astronomers. Of course, there are master's program as well, but I don't think you will know after doing your BTech. But if you are interested, these are the institutes where you can still do masters in astrophysics. PhD, there are a lot of other universities and ISER centers where, yeah, you can get this information on internet. And if somebody is interested in doing PhD outside, masters or PhD outside, there are two routes. One is Union route and USA route. So if you want MSc or PhD in, then you have to appear for this exam. No, for few you have to give JEE. So there is another route by which you do masters and PhD. So of course, if you're doing a PhD in India, doing it, and typically as of now it is around 35K per month, starting other universities abroad. You expect to receive 1,000 to 2,000 stipend. People are fascinated by astronomy but don't want to do astronomy as a serious career. Astronomy is kind of something to look for, and you can, if you want to enjoy it, you can always attend some summer schools, winter conducted institutes, conferences by different institutes, and lecture series like 2 days one, where you can come and understand and see what astronomers are doing in their field and enjoy.
Due to some network issue, due to some network issue, sir has left. Please stay connected. Sir has joined now.
Hi, actually, something happened. I don't know, but yeah, all right. So I think I was in this slide, right? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. You can hear me, right? And see as well. Ashutosh?
Yes,
Hello,
sir, we
yes,
can
sir, we
hear
can
you.
hear you.
Okay, okay, perfect. So yeah, I was saying that astronomy is for everyone. If you are not seriously interested into doing career in astronomy, you can always enjoy it by joining different clubs or attending different programs like today's one. And also you have your own astronomy club. So I'm sure that they are organizing so many interesting programs. So you can enjoy astronomy as a field only. And because it is fascinating and uh, it is for everyone, even a small kid from of 5 years or 10 years to a 100-year-old person also can enjoy and feel the beauty of astronomy. So yeah, if you are further interested, please feel to connect with me. I will be able to help you in resolving your queries, either it is related to astronomy as a field or about the career aspect. I'll be always happy to help you in this regard. So you can feel free to contact me. Thank you. So if you have any queries, I will be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Feeling feeling gratitude and not giving it is like a Thank you, sir. Feeling gratitude and not giving it is like a wrapping a gift and not giving it. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable knowledge and guidance. It was indeed an amazing experience to hear out. Now, if anyone has any doubts or query, you can unmute yourself and ask them or put in your chat box.
Yeah, there is one question in chat box. Of course, by Rohit. I know him personally. I met him in one of the conference. He's very young and a very kind of amazing person who is interested in doing career in astronomy. He has been part of many astronomy programs. Thanks, Rohit, for joining. Yeah, he's asking about can liquid mercury telescope be used to solve the large aperture limitation? Yeah, I mean that has been tried. There is already one telescope under commissioning at Aries in Nainital. The problem with the liquid mercury telescope is basically it is it reacts with oxygen and creates the oxide. So every now and then you have to clean the mercury, and to form a mirror out of liquid mercury, you have to rotate it at a constant speed and achieve a parabolic or hyperbolic shape, which is feasible. But the problem is it will be observing one same part of the sky because it is not steerable. If you steer it, Mercury will flow down. So it is not steerable telescope. Of course, there are new techniques and technologies available so as to track the stars for a shorter duration by charge forwarding. Uh, it can solve, but not. I don't think it will solve the problem at the scale of 10-meter or beyond, because again, achieving such a nanometric shape using liquid mercury will be a very challenging thing. Yeah. It's not as good as optical mirror, I can say. Is co-alignment astrometric alignment or image stacking? Mm, I didn't get what you mean exactly, but yeah, maybe you, if you want to ask.
Sir, like when you were showing the diagram about co-alignment of the mirrors, and when you have those two or three different stars,
Correct.
and then I think you observe them. So, like, how do you align the images? Like, is it like alignment of images, or like I did not understand that part actually.
Uh-huh. So yeah, so basically, when I was saying, first you have to do co-alignment so as to bring all the light dots coming from different segments at one point. Now, what happens is if there is a phase difference between the relative segments, though light is coming at same location, it is not focusing at the same point. Correct. So that is called as co-focusing. So co-alignment brings all the light dots coming from different mirrors at a single point to form a single blob of light, whereas you move the mirrors forward and backward and bring the light in phase. Now, when I'm calling it as in phase, that is challenging. So to do that, what we do is we sample the light coming from neighboring segments. Suppose there are two segments. Let me share it quickly. It's very interesting and again engineering uh, problem. How to solve that? I'll just explain. Yeah, here. So what happens is if this is a case, initially you co-align, bring the light dots. This is visual method, or of course you can use computer programs to track that when I'm moving an actuator, whether this dot is going away or coming towards the expected center of the field. So that is visual way. The next way is basically once everything is focused, what we do is we put a mask on top of this or in the path of this optical beam that enables us to sample some portion of light from one segment and the other segment, and that light is basically sample of two neighboring segments which are not perfectly focused. Because of that, what will happen is they will form they will not form a perfect kind of interference pattern. It will be a non-perfect interference pattern. It means both the light beams coming from two slits is basically a double slit experiment wherein light coming from both the mirrors are not in phase. Hence, they will form something in between the null fringe and the bright fringe. And based on how the fringes are moving or how fringes intensity is changing, based on that, we can bring back this mirror as is shown here. So it is basically an interferometric technique by which sampling the light from different segments, and for that we literally what we do is we put mask which is basically kind of co-aligned or basically mask which is mapped back on the primary mirror and it is mapped to the intersegment edges. That is how we do. Yeah. So it is a basically interference pattern which is interpreted in terms of alignment problem. Yeah.
Got it, sir.
Yeah, there is one question, Shantanu. Yeah, about establishing a radio telescope on far side of moon to be from telescopes on Earth. Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the major source of radio disturbance on Earth is basically what we create by using our telephones and radio signals and so on and so forth. But having a radio telescope on other side of a moon is always a great thing. Only it is challenging in terms of infrastructure because uh, if I want to send a optical telescope of say 1 ton, it is feasible, but I have to send mechanical components of say 500 tons from forming a radio telescope. It will be challenging. For that, what we have to do is we have to constantly look at inventions or innovations in the material technology so as to build telescopes with lighter weight and with some advanced designs which will help us in reducing the overall weight but gives the uh, same advantage of a large radio telescopes. But it's going to be a reality. But question is when. So let's see how technology progresses. Yeah, there is a question about how do we find mass of objects like asteroids or planets. So one of the technique is also you can observe the wobble in the orbit of the planet, and then from that also we will be able to know. It is basically two body problem wherein if you know the wobbling effect and the orbit of the planet, we can estimate the mass. Another way is basically characterizing them and relating them with the uh, kind of knowledge which we have from our own solar system. So that is also one way. Sizes of the planet, shapes of the asteroids, that is done by using something called as occultation method, wherein you observe an asteroid going in front of a star, and based on how many seconds or how many milliseconds of time the light of a star gets blocked, that gives one profile of asteroid. But if you observe it from several locations on the earth, because of the parallax effect, we will see different durations of blocking of light, and then from that people construct size of the asteroids and so on. So that is kind of, yeah, these kind of techniques also exist. But of course, I'm more on a technology side of building telescopes, and yeah, astronomers will further use it. All right.
Is anyone having any doubts?
I think one last question I see from Rohit is about how mirrors are kept cool in TMT in order to avoid thermal expansion. The problem is we can't keep it cool actively, but there is one way. What we are doing is we are using in the TMT, we are having wind vents, by which what we do is we create a laminar flow of cold air which is from outside to pass through the telescope, and that takes out heat generated inside. So there is a mechanism by which we will modulate the wind flow and continuously keep the wind flow at a constant rate inside the telescope, which will help us in throwing out heat generated within the telescope. Whereas there is an active way of cooling the mirrors, but not used in our telescope. It is used typically in solar telescopes, where they will pass the liquid coolant or water sometime through the mirror by creating cavities inside the mirror, and that takes out the heat. But it is required more on solar telescope because they are observing sun. And yeah, so that is how we.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, please continue.
Yeah, so I'm done actually. Yeah, thanks for kind of inviting me for this talk, and I'll be, as I said, I'll be always happy to assist any one of you if you have any doubts or queries. Feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for joining us and giving your valuable time. Now, now it's time for most energetic and enthusiastic moments of our today's session, that is filler event quiz. The link for quiz will be shared within 2 minutes, and the winners will be tagged on our official Instagram account story. Link will be shared within 2 minutes in chat box.